the more CX-5s and CX-50s I drive, the more I feel like the CX-5 is 2025 Mazda CX-5 Turbo Signature. This is the top trim of the CX-5, and the MSRP is right around $42,000 after destination, which places it right around $2,000 or $3,000 cheaper than the top trim Mazda CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus, which is actually what I own. I own a 2023 CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus. This here, the CX-5, is in deep crystal blue mica, and we have Katura brown leather interior, which is actually new for 2025, and also genuine layered wood trim, and the navigation now features off-road navigation as well. So those are the three main changes: the new interior color for the leather, the wood, and the off-road navigation. We're powered by the same 2.5 liter turbocharged inline 4 that's in my CX-50. It makes 256 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque on 93 octane, and 227 horsepower, 310 pound-feet on 87 octane. We've got strut front suspension, multi-link in the rear, unlike the torsion beam that's in the CX-50. The torsion beam is, of course, not independent rear suspension. It is inferior to the multi-link geometry that the CX-5 has. And from the exterior, you can definitely tell a difference. The CX-50 definitely feels a little bit more of like a raised station wagon in a way, whereas this has a more traditional CUV shape and size. In terms of weight, they're actually very similar. The Turbo Premium Plus CX-50 is 3,900 pounds, and this top trim CX-5 is 3,850 pounds. So that 50-pound weight difference, you're not gonna feel in cars that are this size and this weight. We don't have any plastic cladding on the wheel arches like you have in the CX-50, and I think most people are gonna prefer this. It does tend to be kind of polarizing. The CX-50 is going for the more rugged off-road look and feel and vibe, whereas this is going more for like city, urban, a little bit more polished and traditional in a way. We've got 19-inch wheels wrapped in 225 section with all seasons. The CX-50, on the other hand, has 20-inch wheels wrapped in 225 section with rubber. Getting into the interior, you'll notice that this is a more traditional cockpit than in the CX-50, so you don't have issues like the plastic door handles. In certain ways, this feels a little bit more high-end, upscale. I like the genuine wood. Looks great. The leather, especially on the seats, the Nappa leather, super soft. Definitely a lot nicer than in my Turbo Premium Plus. Some of the styling elements and the design cues feel a bit more last gen. Like the steering wheel, the shape, the size of the airbag. It definitely feels older than the CX-50, prior gen. Even the buttons, like the icons, the style of the icons, the size and the thickness to even the lines and the text, you can tell it's prior gen. The HVAC controls, I prefer the Cliff on the CX-50, which I think feels a bit more premium than what they have here with these older icon design. Also just older layout, having all the buttons flat in the dash like that. The actual gauge cluster itself is the same between the two, except on the right-hand side, slightly different styling with, again, the coolant temp and the fuel gauge, but you have a screen in the middle on both cars and then physical gauges on the sides. You have a very similar screen as in the CX-50, same size, just the positioning is a little bit closer. And I've talked about in a previous video, the way that your eyes work, you actually want the screen to be a bit further away rather than closer. And I think this is actually a very good distance where you can still reach and touch it, but it's not so close like in some other vehicles we reviewed recently where your ciliary muscle has to work hard to relax and then contract as you go far focus to near focus, back and forth. So having the screen a little bit further actually makes a difference in terms of your own ocular fatigue. We do have a 360 cam, although it seems to be lower resolution than in my CX-50. Not as good of quality. It's really smart what Mazda has done here. They're essentially offering two very similar and competing vehicles in the market, the CX-5 and the CX-50, but based on your preferences, based on your taste, you can go with one or the other. This vehicle feels a little bit more traditional. It definitely has a more comfortable ride quality, softer suspension, independent rear suspension, which is going to do a big difference, especially when you get to uneven pavement. and just that initial impact harshness is also reduced. And you also have 19-inch wheels rather than 20, so extra sidewall as well. All these things make the car noticeably more comfortable than in a CX-50 top trim. And the other thing I was reflecting on is it's so much better as an ownership experience, just driving the car day to day, to go with the top trim of a lesser vehicle rather than the bottom trim of a higher vehicle. And what I mean by that is going with the top trim CX-5 or CX-50, in my opinion, is a better experience over going with something that's like base luxury, because then you're going to be missing things like your 360 cam. You may not have as much leather and such nice materials on the interior. And those things, I would argue, matter more than the brand prestige of having some German luxury car. You also have this GVC Plus on both the CX-50 and the this 2025 CX-5. So in the CX-5, it came out, I think, in 2019, and in the CX-50, it came out in the first model year of 2023. And what it does is, first, as you give it a little bit of steering input, it actually reduces engine torque to transition the weight further forward, give you a sharper turn in. Then mid-corner, it levels out the power response again to get you neutral balance. And also mid-corner, it's going to apply brake vectoring as you turn to help keep the car a little more planted and not roll as much. And these things are one of the reasons why Mazda CUVs like the CX-5 and CX-50 drive way better than they should. It is a much more engaging experience than a CUV really has any right to be. Is it a sports car? No. There are these memes online of people saying how, hey, I want a dedicated sports car, what should I get? And then Reddit is like, CX-5. No, okay, it's not a sports car. But if you need to get a daily driver that still is fun to drive and engaging and doesn't suck the soul out of you, then I really like what Mazda is doing. It's, as you guys know, I am a big Mazda fan. I bought a 2023 Mazda CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus, brand new, a few years ago. I have many ownership reviews on the channel, things I like, things I don't like. It's largely a very, very positive experience. And then last year, I also bought a MX-5 Miata Club with the Brembo BBS Recaro package, and I am going to be tracking that in the very near future. So subscribe if you want to see that. But yes, 2 out of my 3 cars are Mazdas. And that's because I think they're really striking a balance here between very impressive interior build quality, premium feel, great reliability, and most importantly, fun to drive. That driver-focused nature and ethos that you just see throughout the various inputs, the various characteristics of the car, from having great ergonomics, which is incredibly important. A lot of people underemphasize the importance of ergonomics, but especially in surgery, we obsessed over that. And my mentors would be, yelling at me if I didn't practice optimal ergonomics, because you get physical fatigue, you get cognitive fatigue, your performance drops over time, and you want to minimize that. And that applies to driving too. If you're sitting with great ergonomics, as you have here in the CX-5 and CX-50, of course, it's going to be more upright in a CUV compared to more low down in a sports car. But these are optimal ergonomics for a car like this. And even the way that the screen is positioned closer to your line of sight, plus you have a HUD, so when you have the critical information of your speed, so that you're not gonna break the law unintentionally, get a ticket, without having to glance down, contract the ciliary muscles, and look away and go back up, you're just looking right in your line of sight and you can see it in your peripheral. That's ideal. Like, all these little details, from ergonomics, interior design, to the driver inputs being one-to-one. These are the subtleties and the nuances that I think separate Mazda's offerings from the rest. And now, the whole CX-5, CX-50 debate is very impassioned. And again, Mazda is smart for having 2 similar options on the market, because either one you choose, they win, right? But you'll see owners online who are like vehemently one versus the other. The more CX-5s and CX-50s I drive, and I've driven various model years of each example, the more I feel like the CX-5 is the choice for most owners. More comfortable, more traditional, and certain elements of the interior, they may feel a bit older, but they feel more premium, right? You don't have the plastic door grab here, and the design is more traditional, the button layout is more traditional. You have your heated ventilated seats, your heated steering wheel, and all these things are just, they're kind of where you want them to be, physical controls, etc. The CX-50, on the other hand, I think is the choice for the driving enthusiast, because they've tuned it to be far more stiff and sporty, at least in the 2023 model year. The 24 and 25, they have softened it quite a bit. And it drives in a far more engaging way. It is a little bit heavier. You're not going to notice that weight difference. That 50 pounds is negligible once you're at almost 4,000 pounds, right? But the way that they've tuned the torsion beam, rear suspension, and the stiffness of the car, and even having thinner sidewalls, the whole car feels more responsive. It has heavier steering and greater feedback to the steering as well. This is good, direct, precise steering, especially for a CUV, but it doesn't have as much feedback as the CX-50. They're definitely trying to optimize the CX-50 for a different market and a different driver. Now, the CX-50 is built in Alabama, next to the RAV4, right? Whereas the CX-5 is still built in Japan. And for some owners or some prospective buyers, that's going to be a huge deal. Whereas for others, for people like me, I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, the way a car drives and the little elements like how the steering wheel looks and the button layout and all those things, how new it feels, that's more important to me. I have had a few minor issues. I just had a suspension component prematurely wear down, so they replaced that under warranty. Other than that, I've had no squeaks, no rattles, no issues with my CX-50 after owning it for 2.5 years and putting on close to 20,000 miles. You got the same exact engine, transmission, it's a 6-speed automatic torque converter, and all-wheel drive system between both of these cars. And the turbo engine is actually plenty. It's all you need for a car like this. They've tuned it in a way to have a lot more low down torque and grunt, which is what you want when you're just puttering around town. This is not a car you're keeping near the red line. As you do build to red line, it has that turbocharged, torquey, low down nature such that it dies off near the red line, near the top end. But it's very quiet in here. From driving on the highway earlier, I would say possibly even slightly less road noise than the CX-50. But in terms of sunroof, small sunroof, not panoramic, which again is more of like the older traditional kind of feel. You're gonna see all these little patterns throughout where it feels a bit older and more traditional, not quite as new. But sometimes that traditional is what you know and love, right? I really do like this new grain, wood grain, by the way. It looks really sharp, it's convincing. The steering wheel leather feels great, the seat leather feels great. A lot more body roll than in my CX-50, but again, the trade-off is you get better ride comfort here. There you have it, my friends. The Mazda CX-5. Again, the way I've summarized it in previous videos, and I'm going to say it again here, the CX-50 I think skews on average towards the younger buyer who cares more about driving dynamics and feel and is willing to compromise a bit of comfort. They want a little bit more of that new feel, the styling, etc. Whereas the CX-5 is more for someone who wants the traditional look, the traditional feel, and they want to optimize for comfort as well. Maybe on average, slightly older, but again, these are just averages. You're going to find young people buying the CX-5 and old people buying the CX-50 and vice versa. And my friends, one other thing, as I drive more of these examples of various trim levels from high to low, what is really becoming more and more apparent is that getting a car like the CX-5 or CX-50 at the top trim versus the bottom trim, and that goes really for any car really, it's such a different experience when you're in the interior, when you're driving it, when you're just living with the car day to day, and it's more than just the badge. that's one thing that is becoming more and more front and center to me, which is that rather than looking at the starting price of, oh, you know, an Audi this, BMW that is right here, it's like, well, if I want to get a higher trim that has all those options and features I want, how much does that cost? And what is that experience like versus the top trim of a more affordable car? Something that's Mazda, where it's not luxury, not budget, it's going for that premium sporty feel. I'm obviously a huge fan, but you guys knew that. I already bought 2 Mazdas myself. My friends, big shout out to Mazda for the loaner. Let me know your thoughts with a comment down below. Much love, and I'll see you all in that next one.